Now that's significant. The Market Research Podcast.
Welcome to the.
Welcome to now. That's significant. Oh, hang on. Who's? Sorry.
Are you hosting this?
I'm hosting this. Or are you hosting it? Michael said.
Tell you what, let's co-host this, shall we?
Okay, you start and then I'll take over.
Okay, I am Geoff Lowe, your co-host for today's Now That's Significant podcast. I'm joined by my co-host,
Horst Feldhaeuser. That's me. Yes, Geoff. Now you need to give me some space as well, right? We share this. So today we don't really have a guest joining us. It's just the two of us chewing the fat, as they say.
We are chewing the fat, and we're chewing the fat about quite a specific project.
What project are we talking about?
The subject is what the word I was looking for. A very specific subject. You see, yesterday I threw at you this idea that it would be quite good to share your experience, your deep experience in what it takes to make a good submission for a market research conference paper. And you thought that was a good idea, but you added a dimension to it, which was about ROI of research. Do you want to just talk about the extra dimension?
Yeah, totally. Because the point that I made is, we want obviously our research to have an impact on our business, right? That's our main, I guess, focus of all the work that we do, whether it's as a corporate researcher or as a market researcher in an agency. So I wanted to just add that dimension to, yes, if you present something at a conference, that's great to share with others what you learned, but that needs to be based on an impact on the business, right? Well, otherwise it's maybe not worth sharing.
Absolutely. In fact, the way I frame it now, having heard your position on it, is that the idea of doing a good paper at a conference the idea of research conferences generally is so that we can share knowledge with each other, and in so doing increase the overall capability of the insights and market research industry. And my view on that is that the better we get as an industry of helping humanity understand itself, I think the better everybody is going to be served. Is that how you see it?
100%. And I think, the best conferences are the ones where you hear a case study or a story about what have they changed or what have they done, again, whether it's a corporate or whether it's an agency, or ideally together, to make an impact on the business, right? And serve humanity, as you say, because there's so many things that we can do as insights professionals to make it better for everyone. Absolutely.
Well, can I kick this off with a question of you? Because you've submitted a lot of papers for conferences over the years, most of which have been accepted. A small minority have not. You've also been involved on panels assessing submissions for conferences. In doing all of those things, what have you learned about what makes a winning submission?
Yeah, so I think I need to correct you. I think more papers have been dismissed than I want, but that's okay. It's neither here nor there, right? It's neither here nor there. Yeah. That's a really good thing. Well, one of the things, obviously, most conferences will have a theme of sorts, and they also, if you look at SMR or IX or Quirks or here in New Zealand, the RANS conference, we pick a theme and we might have some ideas of where we have specific buckets under that theme. And you could argue, most topics could fit. You can make them fit, in particular if you have a really good story to tell. And I think that's the main part. You want a really good story to tell. We talk a lot about storytelling in sharing results, and obviously Ray Pointer is a big supporter of that. But it's about telling your story. Okay, so what is my story? So as a business, we made a change, or we brought in a new technology, and we want to go through the motions like in any story, right? It has a beginning, a middle, and an end. So we want to understand as much as we can in a submission in terms of, well, where does the story lead? And also then, what can we learn from that, right? So in particular for conferences, of course, you don't want to go in and say, oh yeah, and we use XYZ and you have to go and buy them because they're awesome. You don't need to do that. You don't even need to say that, because if it's a great story with a great outcome, people will pick up on that. It's like, ooh, I want to do this. I want to try this. So I think it's about what is the story, what is the success, and what are the learnings that we can take out of those. And whether it's a conference presentation or, we have done market research effectiveness awards, and I've charged a few of those. It's that whole story. I think for the awards, it's even more important to see what is the impact of that. And they are called market research effectiveness awards for a reason. It's the effectiveness of the market research, not as in, oh yeah, we used a new cool tool, or we used a new cool methodology. At the end of the day, who cares, right? If it has an impact on the business, and whether it's monetary or in other forms or shapes, and we're going to talk about return on research investment in a moment, I think that's the important part, really.
You mentioned being salesy or overtly selling, obliquely there, and I want to come back to that, but let me just clarify. It seems to me that you're saying that it actually doesn't matter that much if your submission perfectly fits the theme, the stated theme, because you can weave a given story into pretty much any theme. Am I right to be cynical about that, or is that just the way things are?
I think that's just the nature of the beast, really. And if you have an amazing story to tell, I'm pretty sure that most conference organizers would try to get that in, even if it doesn't 100% fit. You can make it fit. Of course, Rants is a great example, right? This year, our theme is AI. So yes, I would say that most of the papers are AI related to some extent.
Yeah.
But you can push that envelope. How much AI do you really need? And if you have a good story, you can make it work. But of course, if we talk about AI, I mean, you wouldn't have something that's not at all taking that into account, because then it's just not working, really.
Absolutely. So just moving on to the salesy thing, organizations like SMR, RANS, who you and I are both part of, we explicitly avoid sales pitches in the papers that we accept for conferences. There are always salesy submissions. If you were advising somebody who was putting together a submission for a conference and they were concerned that it might come across as salesy, what sorts of things do you think you can do to avoid it being overtly salesy to the point that it might be rejected?
I would just always focus on the outcomes, on the business impact, so to speak. So look, yes, of course you want to mention, the company. So if we submitted something for SMR with a company, one of our corporate clients, and yes, we are saying, they're using InfoTools Harmony. Of course we are. But, we're not saying, and then Harmony did this, and then Harmony did that, and blah, blah, blah. It's more about, okay, so what are the outcomes for the client by having the technology available at their hands, right? So, and really, if you're worried about that and that you come too much across, just reread it and try to put yourself into the shoes of I guess, a neutral conference organizer. And if you're really worried about it, make a comment and say, we will not sell, I promise you. And again, in some of the presentations I've seen, you don't even, yes, you want to say, okay, so presenter is Geoff Lowe from InfoTools, and here's Geoff's LinkedIn. That's all you need to do, right? You don't need to put in, InfoTools has been around for 30 years and blah, blah, blah. Because if someone's really interested in what we're doing because of what they've seen in the paper or in the presentation, then they're going to find out, right? You don't need to tell them, and you find me here and call me here and blah, blah, blah. I think it's just really common sense to not overly push your brain out. As I said, if people see that you do good stuff, they will be interested, and Absolutely. Then they will follow up.
Let's be honest, the people who go to conferences to present really do want to put themselves out there, either for themselves or for
Absolutely.
Their business. And so the advice that you're giving, and I totally agree, is do it indirectly. Promote yourself, promote your company by being there and having a good story, and make people want to look you up and look up your business. So I get that 100%. So just thinking about this person again, who's asking your advice on putting a submission together. what do you need to include in a 1-paragraph summary of your paper? What are the important things that need to be in there? I've got some ideas on this, which I'll share with you, but I want to hear from you first.
Great. Yeah. If I knew that, it would be so much easier. Yep. I think it comes down, as with everything, right? Having a really concise 1 paragraph of what is your idea, what is your story, what is the takeout, right? Yep. I can't remember, either I make this up in my head, or I do remember, somewhere in one of the submissions that what's your shit hot, headline that people will say, yeah, I want to see this paper, right? Because you need to find something. Again, even when it goes down to the program, more often than not, you have more than 1 work stream, right? You might have 2 or 3 or sometimes even 4. You want to have people coming to yours, right? So you have to have a really good title. And that same applies for, if you do a award submission, you want to have a really good title that's like, oh, I want to learn more about this. What is this? And maybe a subtitle that says, yeah, and this is what you're going to learn. So, but, and again, it's not, how such and such used info tools to be better. That's kind of boring.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. What I was thinking is that you really need to, and I think I'm echoing what you're saying, Horst, is that you need to find the key, the nugget, the golden nugget that you want people to walk away with, the one thing that is going to mean that people feel, you know what, I'm really glad I went to that paper. Yep. And in a way that doesn't give the whole thing away, but that makes it absolutely clear that this is going to be the value that you will get if you come to this.
It's a little bit like your movie teaser, right? I mean, it has to be a balance of how much to show in the teaser.
But don't tell the whole story.
Don't tell the whole story. And sometimes people come out as like, well, I should have just watched the teaser again because the movie was boring. But hey, that's kind of the idea.
One of the things that prompted me to actually suggest this topic is that I've just been involved on a panel to assess some papers for an upcoming conference. And of the 23 papers that I read, there was a range from a 5-line summary, and that's all there was, to an almost a whole page summary. And the 5 lines was too short. There was not enough in there for me to get enough of an idea. The whole page was way too much. It was almost like it was the whole paper. Yeah. And so I think somewhere in between those is the sweet spot. The other thing that's important to me, I think, and I found this as I was going through these submissions, was any idea which to me seemed genuinely novel really stood out. Any submission that was just yet another case study using methodologies that we're all familiar with an outcome that's articulated, the client did this, it really didn't stand out. But there was a handful of those 23 submissions that either took existing methodologies and connected them together in really novel and creative ways, or that just came up with a brand new, in one case, a brand new novel way of using a different source of data and analyzing it in a way that I've never seen before. What are your thoughts about how important genuinely novel ideas are?
I totally disagree with you there.
Go for it.
Yeah. And look, I think we all have seen the same presentation with a different client time and time again, right? And it's like, yeah, but that's the same that you presented a year ago. And that's where we really need to be careful. But also, being in the business that we are, and you would agree with that, Geoff, is we're still working with a lot of corporates and agencies that do a lot of the work in a way that it has been done for the last 10, 15 years, right? We have some amazing clients who, been ahead of the curve for 10, 15, 20 years in terms of their use of technology. But for every one of those, there's at least one, if not more, companies out there, whether it's a corporate or whether an agency, who still work with table specs and, going back to their data processing team and having their research agency answering questions because they don't have access to that information. And I think that's just the reality, right? So and funny enough, I don't know whether can't remember whether I shared this with you, but the submission we did to ESIMA there's nothing genuinely new, but apart from it's genuinely new for the client, and it's a massive impact on them because we move them out from, I don't want to say the dark ages, but from the dark ages to modern technology, right? So I think that that journey is still worthwhile mentioning. Funny enough, I did say that. And so, you know, if your equivalent on that submission will read that, they will read, I said that this is not new stuff, but it's the reality. And we still want to show the reality that there are still many companies out there who need to make the transition, and we don't want to help them. Right, we need to guide them, and sometimes people are afraid it's too much work, we can't do it, we don't have the manpower to do it. It's possible, and you have written many papers and in terms of, you know, the small steps that you can do to implement stuff, and I think that's still out there. So if it's still a compelling story with a big business impact, go for it. I say, doesn't need to
I
be
accept that
genuinely
pushback totally. So what you're saying is that just because a way of doing things has been around for a while doesn't mean that it needs to be kicked into touch. We can still talk about it,
That's
celebrate it, and it can still reap results, right?
Because there's only so much genuinely new stuff, really, to be honest.
That's true. Yeah. We wouldn't have many papers if we restricted to that. Okay, so let's just pick up on that then. And I realize I'm asking you a lot of questions, and you should feel free to throw some back at me. So let's just say that we're really happy to have case studies that use tried and true methodologies. And if I want to put together a submission for such a case study, how do I make that case study stand out?
Yeah, and I think for me, that's probably a good segue going into the, you know, return on investment, right? So, right, and the whole idea of what is the business impact really? I think in the submission, in your little paragraph, we really need to make and show, you know, what was the mountain that we had to climb, right? And to get to the outcome. And it's interesting. It kind of reminds me a little bit about how do you compare this, right? And while you can't compare like with like, right? You have to look at each of those case studies by itself and each of the examples. So, you know, a few years ago, I've been part of the awards judging, and you might compare a project that has cost $20,000 versus one with $300,000, right? But still, if the $20,000 one has a mountain to climb to get to that answers, whether it's a focus group or whatever, or was just getting to the right people, right? You what it does I need to do to get a really good business impact? And I think, and what's helping there is, as a business, and we as providers and as agencies, we need to support our clients on that, is how can I show my stakeholders in my business that the money that I'm investing has a business impact, right? So if I'm spending, I don't know, $20,000, $30,000 on a research project, what is the outcome of that? And I know I've written for Green Book, and you know, we had those discussions. It's not easy. It's not just like going, okay, so we did this project, so let's go to the ledger and say on the plus side we have this calculator, boom, oh yeah, boom, done.
There it is.
But it can be done. It can certainly be done. We can say, okay, so we now, one of our clients, Orange, right? Many years ago, they were inundated in the insights team with questions from their teams. They moved to a dashboard reporting, predefined reporting solution, and they managed to free up 50, 70% of their time to do more deep dive analyses and stuff like that, because now there's a self-service options for the mundane reports, right? If I'm a brand manager, every month I need to look at my numbers, right? If I don't have to go back to the insights team to get my numbers, but I press a button, there's a tangible outcome, right? I can say, well, how much time am I spending on this or not spending anymore? So I can use that. I can see, well, maybe I don't want to spend $20,000 on a research project, because if I, you know, want to test a new product and it costs me only $15,000 to build, maybe I just chuck it in the market, right? Much cheaper. So again, looking at what is that tangible outcome that we can see through the work that we've done, really. And, you know, we might have to get a bit more creative in understanding what the impact on the business is, you know, or is it by doing research, I understand what not to do, right? And the outcome there, the return on investment might be, I'm not losing a hell lot of money because I didn't do something specific.
I want to pick up on the investment or the actual cost of research, because efficiency is something that's incredibly important. Productivity is something that is incredible. Those two things are connected: productivity and efficiency. We could probably achieve our goal if spending the $300,000, but if we can achieve the same outcomes, the same return on investment for our research for $20,000, that is so much better. And I know that that's inherent in the process, because if we propose a methodology to a client that is $300,000 and somebody else comes in and proposes something which on the face of it, and they can convince the client that they're going to get the same outcome, the 20,000 is going to win every time. I think we should always be looking for efficiencies, and you touched on some of the ways that we can achieve that. You know, the ability for analysts or researchers or client-side people to get answers themselves directly without having to go back to the agency. That saves time, that creates efficiency, and that shortens the time between the data being collected and insights being generated and acted on.
And you know, and there's some interesting thoughts and feedbacks from some of our clients, and I want to push that back to you, because I know how, you know, vocal and how excited you get in getting clients having access to that data. And we talked about, you know, the efficiencies and how time poor some people are, whether it's on the agency side or the corporate side. You know, we had someone telling us, well, I don't need another self-service tool because my people don't have time to do that, right? Yeah. And versus what you just mentioned, the efficiencies, right? Well, here's something, here's an option that costs you less, but at the same time, maybe your people need to do something, but at the same time, they might gain some efficiencies because they don't have to go back to someone else to do some work. How do you approach that when you have your discussions with clients and say, oh, I don't want another self-serve tool like info tools?
There's efficiency as one part of that, but there's also the quality of the understanding that is generated. So what you're leading into here is, I have been a little vocal lately about how important I think it is that people on the client side get actively involved in the process of finding things out with research. In other words, I think it's bad for clients to sit back and expect the researchers to do everything for them and to hand all the answers to them on a platter, and all the actions even. You know, if you do this, then this. Great, thanks. Here's your money. I'll go and do it. I think there's a really important principle here that up until the time a good action is taken by a client in their business that moves their business towards their goals, until that time, there is nothing but cost in the process of market research. All you're doing is spending time, using resources, and accumulating cost. The value only accrues when something good happens in the business that is at least partly prompted by the research. And you touched on this a little bit earlier, that this is the only place you can actually get a return on investment. My argument is that for the clients to really understand, or to really get a sense of ownership of the understanding that is generated from the research, they have to be actively involved in the process of gaining that understanding. And, you know, you mentioned, well, we both talked about the technology that allows clients to actually investigate data themselves, analyze data themselves, find insights themselves. And because those clients understand their products, their customers, their competitors, their markets a lot more intimately than any researcher possibly could, or a researcher that's outside their organization, the understanding that they gain will be quite different in quality and possibly quantity as well. So I think if we start from the principle, if we can agree, I believe it's so, that having clients involved in the process of finding out is good, then you need to be able to push back on the argument. As you said, I've got no time for this. You know, I don't want another DIY tool. my case is that it's yet another part of the total investment that you're making in the process of finding things out, so good things can happen in your business. And you will get a much better return on your total investment if you're prepared to put a bit of your time in to helping the researcher, to working with the researchers, the qualified, skilled researchers, if you work with them in the process of finding out. What do you reckon?
Yeah, it's just I just got two more follow-up questions on that kind
of go for it.
While I'm kind of follow through with this. So, and I agree with you for most of that, as we always do, most of the times, not always. So two questions. So does that now mean that everyone in the business who has access to this data has to become a specialist in market research and fully understand it? So, right, if I'm a brand manager, do I need to become a market researcher? And then my other question is, what with those poor market researchers that, in the corporate agency, they're now going to be redundant because everyone has access to their tools themselves and they don't need me anymore? So are you saying we're making them we're getting them out of a job?
Yeah, there's two parts to the question, and they are two sides to the same issue, right? So on the one hand, do the clients need to become expert researchers? And in the process of doing that, on the other hand, are they making the existing expert researchers in the agencies redundant, right? None of that needs to happen. In fact, I think it requires a different kind of a first principles thinking to work this through. What I'm suggesting is that the experts in market research methodology, the researchers on the agency side, let's say, in the classic model, they're the ones who know how to understand what the client is looking to achieve. What are the business goals you have? What is it that that will move the needle in your business in the direction towards your goal that I can help with? The researchers, the expert researchers, can turn those needs into a questionnaire, a sample design, and a total methodology, which could be quant, could be qual, it could be a bit of both, it could be mixed methodology, that will help answer the question. Now, I'm not for a minute thinking that anybody on the client side needs to gain those skills. All of that is a classical market research set of skills. And there's also a set of research skills around analytics. The market researcher, in my view, back in the day, and I think still today, is a curious person who wants to find things out. And the tools that we have available to us today are unbelievable as researchers. We don't have to be the geeks with the thick glasses and the brown cardies like we used to be back in the day, because I know that's a stereotype that doesn't work, but we don't have to be, because the tools that are available to us are amazing. And this is where it starts to transition to that place in the sorts of tasks that so that the client people can do, because the tools are so good that people on the client side can be part of the process of finding out without having to become career experts in market research, because the tools allow them to do it. So I would push back on that. I don't think anyone's going to be redundant. In fact, I would say that if I'm right, and if this will together, encouraging clients to be actively part of the process of finding out, if that does increase our return on investment, there's going to be more need for this. People are going to want to do it more and more. It's going to be more need for researchers, more need for clients who have this inclination. So I just think the pie gets bigger rather than anybody losing a job.
Yeah. Plus, the people who support this, whether it's on the corporate side or the agency side, we free them up by not doing the mundane stuff, right? Or not going to all my brand managers and say, yeah, here's your monthly report, because they have access to that themselves, and actually supporting the business even more, getting even more return on investment. I like it. That's great.
And just further to that, because if I have, as a client, I've found something out myself, and I'm going to take that understanding and build it into a presentation or a case that I want to make to the business, I'm going to be presenting that with a lot more passion and a lot more ownership if I was part of it, as opposed to if you, Horst, as an expert researcher, told me this, and I'm going to go, okay, it's in the slide, right? I'm going to present the slide to my boss.
Yeah.
So much more powerful.
Great. Love it. That's good.
Now, There's one other thing I wanted to raise with you. Oh, that's right. You actually, you wrote a paper which was published in Green Book about all about ROI. You start off by saying how hard it is to measure ROI, and I absolutely agree. In fact, I think it's probably folly to try and come up to quantify it. But I think there's lots of qualitative measures that we can get. But one of the things I noticed in that article is that you mentioned at the very end, and this is related to this having clients actively involved in the process of finding out. You mentioned a client of yours who used to get static PowerPoint reports, and they replaced that with an interactive online reports, so that the people were actually doing their own finding out. Is that am I misreading this, or is that an example of what I was saying?
No, absolutely. And I think I mentioned Orange a little bit before.
Orange,
and, yeah. And no, absolutely 100%. And you know, I guess the challenge for them was all of these monthly updates, reports that they needed to send out. Global company, global mobile and technology company, and all of their different markets had, you know, they needed their monthly numbers and KPIs and all that kind of stuff. So we worked with them and say, well, you know, how can we semi-automate it, or automate that those market and brand managers have those answers when they need them, right? And that freed the actual insights team up to do more deep dive stuff. When a brand manager comes back to you, it's like, shit, Horst, you know, it's 2 months in a row, my numbers are going down. Can you help me better understand what's going on? And then, yes, of course, the insights team would, you know, drill in and put all there under what you just said. You know, the specialists, they're not just on the agency side, they're also on the corporate side, drill in and see what's going on. That doesn't necessarily need to be with the brand managers, the end users, but having that mundane reporting, you know, every month I get my results and I just need to make sure I tick them. I think, yeah, it's actually, it's a perfect example of what you just said. And that's, of course, what we're in the business in, right? As in making sure that the mundane things, the things that can be automated in terms of analyses or reporting, are indeed done like that. So that frees up everyone who uses those tools to go in more deeper and find out even more stuff that they can do to drive the business, really be more successful,
and to get their evenings and weekends back too,
and have more fun too.
Yeah,
and have more fun too, because most of us are, as you said before, we are inquisitive, right?
Yeah.
But if I'm a market researcher in a corporate and all I have to do is churning out reports every month, and I barely can do that in the time that I have, there's no time for being inquisitive, right? Because I'm just going to be exhausted.
Absolutely. Well,
that's good.
I reckon that is a really nice place to wrap it up and put a bow on it.
I have one more question for you.
Oh, please ask. Let's go.
Yeah, because I did watch one of your previous blogs, and I was just wondering, do you have any other shirts, or is that the only shirt that you have, the brown one there?
This is my video blog.
So
my vlog shirt.
Just make sure next time you do another video blog that you wear, so we all kind of remember, okay, that's Geoff.
Yeah,
right?
This is the job I'm doing. This is the space I'm in. It helps me get my head into the right space. But thank you for noticing. I didn't notice it myself. Thanks for that. Maybe other people will as well.
That's right.
Okay, who's doing the outro? You or me?
Well, maybe I do. So really thank you very much for listening to Now That's Significant with my co-host Geoff Lowe and myself, Horst Feldhaeuser. We talked quite a bit about how market research and insights can have an impact on your business, and how we want to share that with others, right? So that other businesses can also learn from that and can include it into their business. And on that note, I think look us up on all the blog things.
You can find us easy enough. I will. Michael does also want me to say, if you liked it, hit the like button. It really helps other like-minded people find it, and subscribe as well.
Yeah, and share it, right?
Share it
and talk about it.
If you like
how amazing we are, and how how amazing your shirt is, for example, Geoff.
This shirt will be on the cover. It'll be on the still for this
Absolutely.
video. Absolutely. Okay. On that note, thank you, Horst. Thank you, everybody.
That was great. See you.